Hello everyone, this is POW Ponder on Weather. In this update, we're going to be talking about a major Arctic blast coming for the early part of December. So if you're new to the channel, click the subscribe button and notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. Good morning everyone, this is your November 22nd update. We got a lot to go over in this update. We're going to go over all the parameters for the next week or two and go over a lot of my reasoning why I feel an Arctic surge is coming for a good chunk of the US, and then a much colder look for December, as we've been talking about really for the last month or two, as we've been predicting an early start to winter. So let's go over the overall 500 millibar on the North American view. And the really standout is the major cold that's really been building up in Alaska. That's sending pulses of energy this week. These are going to be very progressive, going to be quick moving systems. But the idea is over the next 7 to 10 days, we have a lot of Arctic air really building in Alaska. And by the time we get into that, 4th, 5th time frame into December, a lot of the indications are setting up to where that we're going to be able to release some of that Arctic air down into the United States, because by the time we get into that December 5th time frame, yeah, it's going to be cold, frigid for Alaska for the next 10 days. But then we start to see the ridge start to build out, the jet stream really starts to buckle, the teleconnections go negative, and that sends the Arctic surge plunging into the United States as we have blocking features setting up. And we're going to go into some colder phases on the MJO, which we're going to go over. That's going to allow this cold air to kind of stick around, I would say, for the entire month of December. So I'm expecting a much colder look for December. So let's go over the parameters right now for Alaska, because that's where all the cold air is building. It's been dangerously cold in Siberia. That's not like that unusual for that part of the country. But it is unusual to see 40 degrees below zero temperatures this early. In fact, it's a couple weeks early, even for Alaska standards. So, man, these are real-time temperatures. This morning on November the 22nd, we've got wide spreads, 20s and 30s below zeros at times. It's been as much as a 44 below zero. But even a week from now, this is the November 29th, still a lot of cold air building up in Alaska. That is just waiting on some sort of trigger to funnel it further southward. And I think that's what's going to happen as we go, into that first week of December. So, but let's take you where we are now. So here's the setup this morning for that November 22nd. We do have our little clipper systems that's coming in for parts of the Ohio Valley and parts of the Northeast. That's going to bring some lake effect snows. They had some yesterday, and that's going to continue today, mainly for our northern interior regions of the upper peninsula of Michigan here, upper parts of Pennsylvania, upstate New York, then kind of a mixed bag as you go into Vermont, New Hampshire, get into Maine. But I mean, these are going to be very quick moving systems. So it's not going to be able to lay down much snow or much rain really, because it's just going to be so fast moving through. And as we continue for tomorrow, you can see that's well offshore. There's not much rain. You got clear skies back behind it. Then we turn our attention to the Northwest, where we've got our second system. That's going to be another reinforcing shot of colder air that's going to be pushing southward this week. Out ahead of it, we've got some sporadic snow showers going to be flying in Idaho into Montana as that colder air and that cold front continues to dive south. As we take a look at Wednesday, there's that initial cold push. So again, this is going to be moving so fast, it's not going to be able to lay down much snow in its wake, or really even rain. I mean, this is Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. This is a pretty high travel day. We're just looking at, because these systems again are just so fast, that we're looking maybe a ½ inch of rain. The rain starts, say, in Oklahoma on Wednesday, goes into Dallas-Fort Worth on Wednesday night. But again, probably about a ½ inch of rain going to be laying down, if that, because it's going to be so quick moving as this progresses across, and that will just continue to push off, and that will dive into to the southeast as we go into Thanksgiving Day. But some of these storms could be on the stronger side. It's not even a marginal risk. We're just talking garden variety thunderstorms, essentially from parts of West Texas, Abilene, getting into Dallas, Wichita Falls, parts of Oklahoma City, going into Tulsa. So yes, by that Wednesday night time frame, that'll probably be ending sometime really early Thursday morning for your Thanksgiving in Dallas, with plunging temperatures back behind us. So it's a chilly day. It's a raw day and Thanksgiving for Dallas, with that wind blowing out of the north at 30 miles an hour. Temps in the 50s, is going to feel more like in the 40s for a good chunk of the day under cloudy skies. So it's definitely going to be cold back behind that front. But then we take a look at the Pacific. All right. So, this area has been inundated with atmospheric rivers, and that just continues to pummel this part of the country, especially aligning British Columbia into Washington. So we have another reinforcing shot of atmospheric river and moisture, and you can see it. The fishtails all the way back. I mean, this is just a relentless supply of Pacific moisture. That's going to be inundated, a reinforcing stream of very heavy rainfall going back into the British Columbia area, going into Washington. Some of it might get down into parts of Oregon, but not nearly as intense, and then not really impact the Northern California. But then we have yet another reinforcing surge of atmospheric river moisture going back into play on Saturday. So we see every several days or so we have continuing impacts in this part of the country, where it's really going to be elongating this week for British Columbia into Washington, and then parts of Oregon, not really into California with this particular atmospheric river. But now let's take a look at Europe, because we have a lot of cold air building in Alaska, and one of the signs that we look for is the cold really starts to build in Europe first. And that's what we've been seeing as we get towards the end of November. A lot of these colder anomalies really start to entrench into Europe, getting into that 20 below average temperature range, 25 below average at times. So there's a lot of Arctic air, all right? And that's towards the end of the month. While much of the U.S. is seeing those series of cold fronts, but these are quick moving. So we plunge, down, but then it's not really going to be able to stay around very long. And then we creep back up again as the warm air moves in. But now that Europe is turning colder, that's an indication where Europe typically gets it first, and then it goes to the United States. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing as we go into that first week of December, which is going to be a big transition week from really warm air to really cold air. So now let's take a look at the next 7 days. Here's the setup for the next 7 days of where the precipitation is going to fly. Yeah, what stands out is right here in British Columbia, where they're going to be inundated with multi-inch rains. In parts of Washington, they've had extensive flooding in this region. I think that continues, unfortunately. And then now that some of that moisture it feeds down into Oregon, but the further south you go into Oregon, it's not going to be as much, and then really cuts off in California. But again, with these sporadic series of fronts, since they're going to moving so quickly, they're not going to be able to leave much precipitation in its wake. So you can see the chart here from a tenth of an inch, maybe towards an inch, but yeah, maybe a half inch in Dallas, maybe a half inch in Oklahoma as these systems move through. But sporadically, you can see where all the heavy rain is because it moves so quick. It's lined up well offshore and not really going to be impacting land. So it's still going to rain a lot. It's just going to be out in the open waters. So as we move through and take a look at some of the longer term indications, right? So now we have to take a look at what they call the MJO, which is your Manin-Julie oscillation. This is what I typically kind of use to kind of see it, some of the signals to see, hey, what's coming? What's going to be on the table, what's coming down the line. Here's the chart from November the 21st through December the 5th. And you can see here where the phases of the MJO, and the blue line is as we get into that December 1st timeframe. So as we get into that December 1st timeframe, after we go through that series of fronts, it warms up dramatically because we go into warm phase 6. And look what warm phase 6 looks like for this time of the year. That's a lot of warmth. You may be, hearing indications, hey, we're going to have a blowtorch out there. And yeah, phase 6 is definitely a hot phase, but it really doesn't stay in phase 6 very long. Couple days, as it goes from west to east. But look what happens by the time we go into that December 5th time frame. Now it's a different part. Now we're going to phase 7. Phase 7 is completely the opposite, colder look. And as this continues through into phase 7, look as it goes into the start of winter, phase 8, phase 1, those are all colder phases. So we are going into the colder phases of the MJO as we go into December. That's why I feel like December starts off very warm, yes, but it's going to be ending, after that first week of December. And I think it predominantly stays cold for, overall for the rest of the December. So now let's take a look at what's going forward, because look at the chart by the time we get in that December 1st. Boom. That is phase 6 all day long. That's your warm pattern. That is your 10 to 15 to 20 degrees above average temperatures. That's what implies that, that phase 6 of the Man and Julie oscillation, going into that time frame. But look what's lurking to the north. We've got all that cold air building in Alaska. We're starting to see initial signs that may start to see indications that's moving further south. So as we get, and that's why the indications of the Climate Prediction Center has us above average, and going into that late November or first couple of days of December, because we're going to be in phase 6 as it moves from west to east. The colder anomalies are out here, but then eventually go into the east as we get deeper, into phase 6. But then phase 7 is lurking, which is a much colder look. So now let's go into that. Now let's take a look at the teleconnections and maybe, seeing some signs of leverage of be able to push further southward as we get deeper into December. So as we get into December, here's the AO, which is your Arctic oscillation. You can definitely see it turns negative right around that 5th time frame, right? Right around December the 5th, and it pretty much stays negative pretty much almost for the entire month of December. But at the same time, we're finally seeing the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, which is your EPO, which has primarily been positive for a good chunk of fall. I mean, it's been positive. We haven't been able to align these teleconnections for having consistent cold, and not just get cold, but longer durations of cold that last for a longer period of time. That's what we're seeing now with the teleconnections of the EPO going negative by the time we get, look at that, December the 5th time frame, and that just extends as we go into that second week of December. So we're starting to see alignments in the teleconnections that cold that's building in Siberia, that's building in Alaska, that's going to send the trigger to be able to allow that colder air to start penetrating further southward into the US, and the driving mechanisms will continue to push this through with indications of the MJO going to phase 7, phase 8, and phase 1. Those are all colder phases for December. Now let's take a look at the temperature anomalies and how this kind of matches up. Here's that December 4th time frame, right? We see warm phase 6 out east. That's going in, so you're going to be able to see a transition from pretty extreme anomalies from really warm phase 6 and really cold phase 7, right? So we got all those above average temperatures and 10, 15, 20 degrees above average temperatures as we're starting to see that initial surge of much colder air coming from Alaska, where it's been building for weeks now. That'll start diving southward. So now we're starting to see the temperature anomalies of, say, that 10 to 15 degrees below average temperatures. That's on the 4th, right? So as we go into December 5th, as I showed you, the MJOs go into that colder phase 7, right? This continues to press further off into the east. Now we're seeing the much colder anomalies start to enter the picture of those 20, almost 30 degrees below average temperatures at times. These are high temperatures on December the 5th, right? I know it's a long ways out. I get it. But this just shows you the pattern of what we're going to be up against as we go into that first week of December with those colder anomalies pushing into Montana, into Wyoming, getting parts into Colorado with those 10, 15, upwards to 25, degrees below average at times. So a lot of you guys are like, hey, that's great. What's considered average to below average? Because, temperatures continue to fall every single day. People move around a lot. They're not used to maybe living in a certain area for an extended period of time. But this is what average would look like by the time we get into that December 5th timeframe. So these are average high temperatures for December 5th. We're talking 30s in Montana, 20s typically. These are high temperatures into the Dakotas, into Minnesota, into parts of Wyoming here. You start getting into the 30s and 40s as you get into Colorado, 40s in Kansas, 50s, like 60 degrees average high temperature in the Dallas-Fort Worth area on December the 5th. So it just kind of gives you an idea of what typically average would look like by the time we get into that December 5th timeframe. So now let's take a look at the anomalies by the time we get into that December 6th timeframe. Now we're starting to see those really, colder surge of temperatures again, 20, 25. Now we're upwards to 30 degrees, if not even higher than that, below average. That is true, intense Arctic air plunging southward as we go into that December 6th timeframe, and this would continue to funnel south into New Mexico, start creeping into Texas by then, and the central part of the U.S. as we're transitioning from phase 6 to phase 7, right? We're going to see the extreme temperature anomalies. Now let's go into 7. This continues to press on December the 7th. Yeah, we're talking almost 40 degrees below average temperatures, really penetrating further south, getting the deeper the heart of Texas. This is true Arctic air, would make it all the way down to the Rio Grande Valley, and then it would push probably further eastward as that funnel effect continues to get locked and loaded. And as we get deeper into phase 7, this is just a cold pattern, right? So once you open the floodgates, then you get blocking setting up. Then that allows that cold to kind of not just, for a day or two. It's going to stick around for an extended period of time. Now, again, I know this is a long ways out. I'm just kind of showing you, what the temperatures would look like if this would actually come to fruition. Yeah, by the time we get into that December, these are actual temperature, guys. That is some cold stuff. All these areas in greens are negative temperatures, below zero temperatures. So we're talking upwards to 20 below zero in parts of Colorado, getting into the teens below zero in New Mexico, getting into single digits in the panhandle of Texas, Nebraska, getting into Kansas. So this is definitely some true Arctic air that's becoming for the early part of December. Now, what would the actual feels like, say wind chill temperatures by then? That 40 below zero wind chill type air that's been in Alaska, 2 weeks later, it's over Colorado, right? I mean, so that's the difference of once you get that surge and once it's able to release that cold air, it's building. There's no question it's building. And it's just going to be able to send it further south as we get into that further first week of December. And I just think that just continues as we go deeper in December with a very cold look that's potentially on the table for December. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.